And now we're going to enter our game of true and false, so we can really understand what's underlying these tools to better shape our understanding to make informed decisions about when it makes sense to actually use them, if it makes sense for us to use them. So my first question for you here is, generative AI tools understand your input and their output as if you were chatting with a person. Is this true or false? So again, for those attending live, the link is in the chat if you would like to participate in this poll. I'll give it a few more moments to see if there are any other votes that come in. Right now we're 50-50. Half of us say this is true, half say this is false. The correct answer here is false. Generative AI tools don't actually understand your prompt or their own answers. So how does this actually work? Here is a layperson's understanding. Again, I'm coming at this as a librarian, not as a computer programmer, not as an AI developer. Essentially, generative AI tools are trained on enormous sets of data that are broken down into tokens. So you'll have words or phrases that are divided into what are called tokens. Tokens are assigned a number, and really, that's what the generative AI tool sees. So we have our person typing in their prompt. All of those words and phrases are then transformed into tokens, the building blocks that this tool uses in order to generate outputs. Essentially, large language models are superpowered versions of predictive text. Based on an input, which is broken down into those tokens, into those numbers, they use algorithms and fancy math to generate a likely response of tokens. So to generate a likely response of numbers that subsequently are translated back into words. So at no point is the tool actually seeing and understanding the words themselves that go in and the words themselves that go out. All of the words and phrases are transformed into tokens. There's some fancy math that goes on in the background. They're turned back into tokens, and then you get the response translated into words. So at no point does it understand you as an actual person would understand you. Next question. Generative AI tools always share accurate and true information. True or false? All right, the answers are rolling in a little more quickly this time around, and we all say this is false. And yes, this is false. These tools frequently share false information. And this is called hallucination. So hallucination is the term to describe the fact that generative AI can make things up. Again, they're superpowered predictive text. They're just predicting what they think the most likely token is in response to whatever you put in. So the thing is, though, they sound really convincing, they sound really cognizant, but they're only putting the most likely words next to each other in their outputs. They have no commitment to truth. And the interesting thing is that hallucinations aren't going anywhere. They're not getting better. In some cases, hallucinations are happening more frequently. They're getting worse as these tools continue to develop. In September of 2025, OpenAI actually released a study where they revealed it's kind of baked into how these tools work. Hallucination is just a part of the process. There's no way for them to get rid of hallucination altogether. It will always be a part of ChatGPT and generative AI tools. The only way that they could, in theory, get rid of hallucination is if they gave ChatGPT the capacity to say, I don't know, at a certain threshold. But that threshold is so high that they don't think users would still want to use ChatGPT if it said, I don't know, as often as it would have to avoid hallucination. So hallucination is a big problem, and it's just a part of these tools. It's not going to go anywhere. So here's a quick video now that'll show us what hallucination looks like in action, and it will also explain a little bit more about what tokens are and what they look like.
Why is there no AI model that can answer this really, really simple question? How many R's are in the word strawberry is stumping all of the major AI models right now. So here's ChatGPT's answer, here's Meta AI's answer. If it's not obvious, by the way, the answer is three R's in the word strawberry. Claude, when questioned, even pushes back and says that it respectfully disagrees, even though it's, wrong. What is actually happening here? The way that large language model technology works today is that before the AI model actually receives your input, before it receives the text that you typed into chatgpt.com, it tokenizes that input. And it makes it easier for the computer to deal with all of this data. So this is an example of the tokenizer that OpenAI uses, and as you can see, here they assign every single word or part of a word to a token ID, so it's to a numeric digit. And then the prediction that the AI model makes is based on these numbers. It's not based on the actual text input. So the AI model never gets to actually see the word strawberry. So when you ask how many R's are in the word strawberry, it's making what us computer scientists call a random frickin' guess. Why is there no AI model?
All right, so what this means is that if we're using these tools, first we need to know that they make things up a heck of a lot. The second is that if we provide more context, we might get better results. So something interesting that you can do with the word strawberry is if you break it down into each separate letter and input them separately, then ChatGPT or these large language models will have to look at each letter separately as a token. You're giving it more information to work with, more context. And in that case, it's able to identify the R's separately, and it will tell you that there are 3. So if you provide more context, if you break your query down into smaller parts or tell a tool to draw information from a specific resource, it'll be more accurate. It might not be perfect, and it's important to still ground things with your own expertise, review them with your own expertise. But if you do ground your queries and give more information where possible, you may get better results. And that's important to know. Next question. You can ask generative AI tools to recommend reliable resources. So we know we don't necessarily trust the information right away that's being shared by some of these generative AI tools. Can we ask them to recommend other things to us that might be better and more useful? Can it be a shortcut for tracking down more reliable information? All right, so most of us are saying yes to this. And I would say this is false-ish. Publicly available generative AI tools often hallucinate requested resources as well. So if you're asking for book recommendations, article recommendations, websites, they might get some things right, but they might also give you things that are not exactly what you're looking for. So hallucination applies to citations too. These tools infamously will make up citations, and you may have encountered this in some scholarly conversations that you've had around generative tools, but because they're superpowered predictive texts, they put the most likely things next to each other. They can put a likely author name next to a likely article title, next to a popular journal, and just kind of string it together for a citation that doesn't exist. Additionally, it does this if you ask for news reports. There have been studies around using AI search engines, large language models for information related to the news and current events, and they also make things up a heck of a lot. Essentially, some of these newer models too, they have internet access. They're able to kind of crawl the internet, but just because something is on the internet doesn't mean it's true. So there are ways that people have been gaming the system a little bit, where if they create a certain number of fake web pages on a topic, it will start to come up more authoritatively in quotation marks, in things like ChatGPT. So it's important to use our critical judgment when we are accessing resources that are recommended by these tools. And I've played with this around like myself. I'm not just saying this from my research experience. I'm saying this from hands-on experience with these tools. I've asked for scholarly materials. I've asked for other resources, and frequently I spot errors. In this case, ChatGPT told me that it was only giving me hypothetical article titles, not real ones that I actually needed. So really approach with caution. ChatGPT does not know how to say, I don't know. It will always give you an answer, and it doesn't matter if that answer is true or not because it has no way of really knowing. So this means, again, we should critically approach all generated information and seek strategies to generate more reliable results. So again, this might be providing more context and grounding the tool in whatever information source you want to be working with. And it is a misconception and misuse, I would say, of generative AI to ask it for any kind of information without verifying that information. So there was a famous case over this past summer where there was an article listing top recommended reads for summer. The author of that article used ChatGPT or some other tool to help them generate this list that would then be published and did not fact check. Turns out a bunch of the books were fake books that came up in that list. And it turns out other things in that publication were also fake. There were fake experts who were quoted and quotes that did not exist that were included in other articles. So regardless of whether this is being used in a scholarly context or perhaps a more real world context, we need to verify the information that we're finding with generative tools. We can't just take them, assume they're good, and put them out into the world as happened in this case here. So what's important is to sift through your outputs, to sift through the things that you see in a generative tool or out in the world. This is a helpful practice to verify anything that you see out in the world. The first letter in SIFT is S, and S is for stop. Take a moment to consider the information or output provided by the AI tool in more depth. Is it really eliciting a strong emotional response in you? Frequently, that's a sign that something is more disinformation, and it's trying to get a rise out of you to help spread something that's fake in order to just, I don't know, disturb the peace. So first, stop. Second, investigate the source. Investigate the tool that you're using. Use that robot test that I shared earlier to identify any possible weaknesses, shortcomings, or bias in the tool itself. And then also check the currency of the data that the AI tool is trained on. Some tools will be more transparent than others. Usually transparency is a good sign, and then you'll be able to really make informed decisions about what you see. F is for find better coverage. Locate additional resources on the same topic as the information generated by the AI tool and compare with what non-AI generated material, whether that's scholarly or otherwise, states in comparison to the AI generated content. So take what you're seeing and then look against other sources. Maybe you do a Google search, you're able to find some news sources, you're able to find other reports. If you have a list of books and you suspect that some of the books aren't real, maybe you could search for them in the library. You could search for them using maybe your favorite bookstore's website. You could look up book reviews. There are lots of things that you could do to verify information. And then finally, trace claims, quotes, and media to the original context. So ask these tools to list their sources when generating content and confirm that those sources are real and that the information in those sources matches the generative AI tool's output claims. The source itself might be real, but if the tool is saying, oh yeah, this quote came from this article, double check that it actually did. Sometimes it makes that up too. And this is where not all tools are created equal. There are some tools that are grounded in specific data sets and that use RAG. RAG stands for Retrieval Augmented Generation. Essentially, this is when a tool is using a very specific data set and it's only pulling material from that data set. So it's grounded in material in that same way that I'm suggesting you might want to provide extra content to these tools. You want to specify the context that it's working within. These tools do that by default. So there are examples in the libraries collection. We have tools that are a part of the databases Scopus and Web of Science, and their AI tools are rooted in those databases. That's all that they draw from. So they're a little bit more reliable if you're looking for scientific scholarly material. There are also emerging deep research tools and functions. So if you're looking for information, these might be better because they do multiple things at once. They're not just doing a really quick search, getting the most likely thing, tossing it together and giving you a result. What they're doing is actually employing a bit of agentic AI to send different AI tools off in different directions to do a whole bunch of searching to get a more comprehensive answer for you. And so I'm curious, do you know what agentic AI is? This is something that's a little bit newer. It's coming to the fore now. But I'm curious, would you say, yes, you know what it is? Vaguely, you couldn't really explain it, but you know it's a thing, or you have no idea or no idea. All right, so most of us don't really know what it is. So let's take a brief moment here. And this looks really complicated, but I'll break it down for you. Essentially, agentic AI starts with something like a large language model. This large language model, you give it your question, it then employs a team of AI tools. It's kind of like a factory, and it sends each AI tool off to go do something separate that then will come together later to give you that final product, like a factory. Instead of a person overseeing the whole process, an AI agent oversees the whole thing. So it sends off all the workers to do all the different things. They bring stuff back. It makes decisions about whether this looks correct, if it looks useful, and it might send them out to go do more stuff, bring it all back in. And when it all looks good, it stitches it all together and it gives you the final output. So there's a lot more that's going on in the background to give you more comprehensive answers. And interestingly, AI agents may also have the capabilities to take action. So there are some tools that are out there that are being explored and developed that might be able to help you plan and book a vacation. It could book your flights for you. There are others that are being explored that can manage your email inbox and actually take actions like delete things and flag things for you. But the thing is, I'm a little skeptical about how much agency we're actually giving to these tools. There was a famous case maybe like a week ago, something like that, where a prominent AI developer used an AI agent to help manage her email, and it went rogue and deleted absolutely everything. So you really, I think, having a human in the loop and human oversight is really essential, especially if we're giving some of these tools more responsibility and the ability to take actual action, like delete emails or book a flight. You definitely want to have some oversight in that process. And it's important to remember that no tool is perfect and it does not have your expertise. They can be useful starting points for projects, but they're not ending points, and they're not meant to replace your own work and your own agency. Again, they're commonly called co-pilots, not autopilots. So these tools make mistakes, and individuals have to be at the helm of their own work as the experts. Like I said at the outset, it's never been more important to have human expertise. All right, another question for you here. Generative AI tools are less biased than people and provide impartial, objective responses to queries. All right, so far we're saying that this is false, and I would agree. Generative AI is just as biased as the people who design it and the data that it's trained upon. It's just a little bit more insidious because this bias is really baked in. We can't always see it. The algorithms and the training data that power these tools are a bit of a black box, and it's not shared with users what's in there. So racial and gender bias have been found in many generative AI tools. So be aware of this in any output you receive. It's important to look at outputs with a critical eye. We don't know what data was used to train these tools. In many cases, it's huge swaths of the internet, and the internet is not always a friendly place. There are a lot of really biased forums on Reddit that have gone into ChatGPT. We also know that people can put anything up on the internet, and if it's there in sufficient volume, it will be picked up by these tools, whether it's progressive, whether it's helpful for society, or whether it's really biased and really stereotypical and possibly really harmful. Anything could end up in these publicly available tools. And I want to show you just how subtly bias can creep into some of these tools. I'm going to show you a very brief clip from this TED Talk. It is fantastic. The TED Talk itself, I believe, is only 5 to 10 minutes long. It's not a very long one, but this is by Adam Alexic, who is a really popular etymologist on social media. So he studies language, and he's going to talk about the bias in language as is perpetuated by ChatGPT.
The same thing is currently happening with AI chatbots, because you probably assume that ChatGPT is speaking English to you, except it's not speaking English, in the same way that the algorithm's not showing you reality. There are always distortions depending on what goes into the model and how it's trained. Like, we know that ChatGPT says delve at way higher rates than usual, possibly because OpenAI outsourced its training process to workers in Nigeria who do actually say delve more frequently. Over time, though, that little linguistic overrepresentation got reinforced into the model even more than in the workers' own dialects. Now that's affecting everybody's language. Multiple studies have found that since ChatGPT came out, people everywhere have been saying the word delve more in spontaneous spoken conversation. Essentially, we're subconsciously confusing the AI version of language with actual language. But that means that
So you can see even something as subtle as word choice can be biased and amplified as we continue using these tools. So we need to be attuned to those things, whether it's in the words that we're seeing or the images that we're seeing generated by AI. So next question, it's easy to identify that generated material, whether it's alone or with a helping tool. Is this true or false? Okay, so many of us say this is true. A few of us say this is false. I would say this is false. It is increasingly challenging to identify generated material, and tools that claim to be able to identify generated text and images are frequently unreliable and prone to error. So how can you tell if text is AI generated? I mean, often you can't. It's important mostly to practice critical thinking when you're engaging with content anywhere these days, because anything could be generated. It's important to check all generated information against other reliable sources, as we mentioned before. And then consider too, does text of unknown origin elicit a strong emotional reaction? As I mentioned, this might be a sign of generated disinformation. So we need to have that moment where we stop before we immediately share and engage with material. We should also note that AI detection tools are imperfect and may deliver false positives. Patterns, like the use of em dashes, cannot totally be relied upon. There are many writers who just like to use em dashes. I spent a fair bit of time in my undergrad reading a lot of Victorian novels. That's one of my areas of research interest. And I got to tell you, the Victorians were really fond of the em dash, but they definitely didn't have ChatGPT at their disposal. So sometimes you may get a hint that something could be AI generated because of the language patterns that are in there, but there's no really reliable way to determine that. What's most important is that we engage with the material critically. So we know when we're looking at something that is true or something that is false or trying to mislead or persuade in a certain direction. That critical thinking is the most important thing. Now, how can you tell if images are AI generated? Again, often you can't. It's getting harder to tell the difference. Now, sometimes there are tools that will have in their metadata some kind of watermark that tells you that it was an AI generated image, but that's not universal across all generated images. Not yet, anyway. I'm hoping it will be. The old guidance of looking at people's hands and looking at their teeth doesn't always apply. These tools are now really good at generating images, and they frequently get people's hands right. You're not getting extra fingers. You're not getting all this weird stuff anymore. More importantly, I would look at subtle details. Look at their jewelry, glasses, facial hair. Does it all kind of make sense? If someone is speaking, does the sound and speed match with their facial movements? And in their environment, do the shadows or reflections correspond? Does it all make sense, the physics of the space? I would also, if you're looking at videos, consider if there are static-like fluctuations or shimmer in details like hair and foliage. Look at the background details as well. Are they what you would expect them to be? And then think of the video as a whole. Does the content actually make sense, or is it slightly outrageous? Does it seem almost impossible? Is it too good to be true? Consider all of that, and that might help you to identify AI generated videos. And here I have an example. This is one that I saw on social media, and this is actually the debunking video of it on social media. So this was a video that actually fooled me, and then I saw this and it worked through how to identify that this was AI.
Were you betrayed by an AI video? Here's what to look for next time. time. Focus on crowds first, because as a human, you can recognize real people more reliably than AI can make them. You might find extra limbs, or people who pop out from nowhere, or deformed and confusing masses of legs. Strange objects like this, or weird furniture like these chairs, or extra long surreal hallways might also help you out. Scrutinize human behavior closely. That old man didn't even attempt to make eye contact with the dog, and when you look at his eyes closely, it is uncanny. Counting fingers and limbs isn't very reliable, but these two women had 5 hands between them. Pausing during quick action can help, since that's when AI might cram fingers together or lose count. Many AI videos look too polished or smooth, but those look blurry and fuzzy. This extra blurry patch is where the creator scrubbed an AI watermark to trick you. Many AI videos don't have watermarks, but they are a dead giveaway. Look for 2 stages of situations, like asking who was ready to film that. It's too perfect. AI can make things feel scripted like Hallmark movies. Look for real humane society.
So the video goes on to kind of show you, like, here's the real content that you should look for in place of this. But I think that this creator at Show Tools AI is excellent at debunking videos. So if you're ever uncertain about AI videos, I'd recommend any of his stuff. And he's on, I think, pretty much all social platforms these days. But his tips are always really good, especially as AI continues to develop and it gets harder to spot some of this content. I would also encourage you to play around with this experiment that's run out of Northwestern University. It's inviting anyone who visits this site, Detect Fakes, to identify whether images are AI generated or not. Some of them are really easy, like this one here of astronauts, I don't know, eating a pizza that's also a cutting board, but others are really hard to tell. So it can be a really kind of fun little game to test your skills and figure out if you can identify whether something is AI generated or not. Now, why does this all matter? It matters because informed understanding of these tools leads to informed choices regarding their use or abstention. We don't have to be using these tools. It's important to know how they work so that we can really understand how and when we should use them, and if it makes sense to use them, depending on what it is we actually have on the go.